Hello, everyone. I'm very glad to be here to share our research with all of you. Italy is a beautiful country that left a deep impression on me. So I hope this talk will impress you as well. So now let's get started. First of all, please allow us to introduce ourselves. We are from Singular Security Lab. Our research primarily focuses on virtualization, including QEMU, KVM, VirtualBox, VMware, and other lightweight hypervisors. Over the past 3 years, we have conducted research on virtual I/O devices and achieved 3 QEMU escape exploits. This talk will cover the last one. We presented the first escape at HITP 2023 Parkit in Thailand, and the second at Hexacon 2024. And this third one at GeekCon 2024 DF context. Today, we will share the details of this third escape. Okay, this talk will be divided into 4 parts. First, we will provide a brief introduction to our research target. Second, we will share the details about the vulnerabilities and how we discover them. Third, we will detail the process of exploitation. Finally, we will offer a brief conclusion. So, in the beginning, let's make a brief introduction to QEMU KVM. QEMU KVM is a widely used open source virtualization framework. In this framework, QEMU operates in user mode and primarily provides device virtualization, while KVM runs in kernel and in kernel mode and mainly offers CPU virtualization, memory virtualization, and interrupt virtualization. Our main focus is on device virtualization on QEMU. Okay, now let's take a look at the QEMU attack surface. As one of the most widely used virtualization framework, QEMU supports a variety of devices to accommodate different scenarios, such as USB devices, display devices, network devices, and more. Depending on the format of virtualization, these virtual devices can be classified into full virtualization and parallel virtualization. Generally, parallel virtualization devices are more efficient than full virtualization devices, which is why they are becoming increasingly popular. At the same time, more and more parallel virtualization devices are being added to QEMU. Since QEMU uses the virtual protocol to implement parallel virtualization, they are referred to as virtual I/O devices. Therefore, our research focuses on the virtual I/O devices. Yes, there are many virtual I/O devices in QEMU, such as virtual net, virtual GPU, and others. In this talk, we are primarily focused on virtual net and virtual sound, where the vulnerabilities occurred. To briefly conclude why we choose virtual I/O devices. First, the large number of virtual I/O devices presents many attack surfaces. Second, due to the strong performance of virtual I/O devices, more and more cloud service providers are opting to use them. Lastly, QEMU is continually adding new virtual I/O devices. Yes, new code often means new bugs. Yeah, you may have noticed that the title of our talk is Black Box Escape. So, what exactly is a black box escape, and how does it differ from a conventional or general escape? In our understanding, a general escape assumes that you already have some knowledge about the host environment. This typically including two key pieces of information. First, details about the host operating system, such as whether it is Ubuntu or Debian, the Linux kernel version, and the glibc version, and so on. This information is crucial for calculating offsets of libc function or used for RLP gadget within libc. Second, access to the QEMU binary itself, which allows you to determine the address of QEMU specific function and the gadgets embedded in that binary. So in construct, a black box escape requires none of their prior knowledge. It works without needing to know the host OS details or QEMU binary, making it especially suitable for public cloud environments where much information is often inaccessible or deliberately hidden. So what capability must our vulnerability possess to enable a successful black box escape? First, it must provide fixed address information leakage, meaning that when an address is leaked, you can reliably determine whether it belongs to QEMU, a system library like libc, or the heap. Second, the vulnerability should allow us to construct an arbitrary address read primitive, enabling us to read the memory from any location we choose. Finally, perhaps most importantly, the vulnerability must be exploitable in a general escape scenario. In other words, if we did have full knowledge of the host environment, such as operating system version or QEMU binary and so on, the same vulnerability would still be sufficient to achieve escape. All right. Now, moving on the second part of the talk, I will introduce two vulnerabilities we discovered. I will walk you through how we found them and then evaluate whether these vulnerabilities satisfy the three key capabilities we just discussed for black box escape. Yes, we discovered these bugs through fuzzing. Yeah, as is known to all, fuzzing is a highly effective approach for uncovering vulnerabilities in virtual devices. To that end, we built a fuzzing framework specifically for virtual devices, which we previously presented at HITB. This framework is an enhanced version of Virtio, a system introduced in a paper published at ACM CCS 2021. In short, we hooked the IOV to buff function. Yes, IOV to buff function in the left of the slide. The primary entry point for data input into virtual devices. By mutating the data passed to the IOV to buff function, we are able to fuzz virtual devices efficiently and systematically. As mentioned on the previous slide, we can fuzz virtual devices by hooking the IOV to buff function because its source buffer comes from guest RAM, which we can fully control, and the destination buffer is the 1, 2, 3, 4, the 4 parameters, and the last parameter is the copy size. This function is just like a copy from user in Linux kernel. The corresponding counterpart is the IOV from buff function, whose destination buffer is also located in guest RAM, meaning we can fully read its output. The vulnerability we will discuss next is directly related to the IOV buff function. So toxic chip, show me the code. Now, I will walk you through the first vulnerability, an out-of-bound read bug in virtual net device. Interestingly, this bug was not fixed with a dedicated security patch. Instead, it was resolved during a broad code refactoring effort. Let's take a look at the left-hand side of the slides. If host the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the last parameters of the IOV from buff function host HDR if it is smaller than size of MHDR, the function may copy data beyond the intended buffer boundary into guest RAM, potentially leaking sensitive address information. So the key questions are, can the guest control the value of host HDR? The second is, can this code path actually be triggered when host HDR is less than size of MHDR structure? The answer to both questions is yes, because during filing, address sanitizer reported a heap-based out-of-bound read bug, confirming that this vulnerability is indeed triggerable. To trigger it, two conditions must be satisfied. First, NSS data pointer populator hash must be set to true, and host HDR must be less than size of structure virtual net HDR MRG RX buff. So next, let's take a look at how we satisfied these two conditions. First, let's clarify where host HDR comes from. It's derived directly from the guest HDR. On line 662, we can see that host HDR is assigned the value of guest HDR. On line 649, RSS data pointer populator hash can be set to true, but host HDR is not less than size of structure virtual net HDR MRG RX buff structure. However, on lines 651 to 653, guest HDR can be set to size of structure virtual net header, which is smaller than size of structure net HDR MRG RX buff, and the populated hash remains unchanged. Therefore, we can first execute the branch where version 1 is true, and then trigger the bug by entering another branch. However, the result host HDR sub size of MHDR could be a very large value. Could this be exploitable? Fortunately, we found that if the capacity of the IO vector is smaller than the number of bytes to send, the access data will be dropped. Thus, we can control the size of the overflow. We now have a heap-based outbound read with a controlled size, which can be leveraged to leak sensitive information. Okay, let's talk about the second bug. While reviewing the changelog of a new QEMU version, we noticed some interesting changes. One of them being the addition of a new virtual devices in QEMU version 8.2. At the first glance, we noticed that there is no validation of buffer size, which could lead to an out-of-bound access. As every security researcher knows, bugs never travel alone. So let's start fighting. After a while, Address Center reported a heap buffer overflow bug. Okay, next, let's figure out how this bug occurs. First, the vulnerable chunk is allocated by sound-conf pointer streams in the virtual sound realize function. Then, the heap-based out-of-bound read is triggered by providing a controller stream ID. So where is sound config pointer streams from? There are two ways to set a sound config pointer stream. One is via the command line boot parameter. If the parameter is not specified, it defers to 2. The other is through the virtual sound set config function, which can be invoked by the guest. And in this case, the value of sound config point streams is fully controlled by the guest. Okay, let's give an example to trigger this bug with just 3 steps. First, put the virtual sound device with the default number of streams, which is 2. The second, call virtual sound set config to set number of stream larger than 2, such as 5. The third, access a stream with stream ID equals to 4. Then an heap overflow, heap out of bound access bug will be triggered. However, this bug's patch is very simple. It simply removes the virtual sound set config function. And just as DarkKiller once said, the most security code is code that never existed. Next, my partner Lei Xiao will detail the exploitations by the origin these 2 bugs. Yeah.
Thank you. And I will demonstrate how we changed these 2 vulnerabilities to achieve QEMU virtual machine escape. As my colleague outlined, the virtual net device contains an out-of-bound read vulnerability that we can leverage for information leakage to bypass mitigation ASLR. But to exploit this effectively, we first need to understand the precise mechanics of this bug. And this is a screenshot of GDB backtrace command execution result, which indicates the function call flow of virtual net receive RCU. This vulnerability manifests within the virtual net receive RCU function, where we can perform an out-of-bounds read on the buffer and copy that data to guess the RAM for information leakage. And through stack trace analysis, we trace the buffer's data flow and identified a critical function, tap send. From the code snippets on the right side, we could see that the buff comes from a member of tap state object. Our investigation revealed that this buffer pointer originates from tap state object member, a fixed size inline buffer of net buff size length. This means we are dealing with a structured out-of-bounds read where pointer containing members reside at the buffer's tail. Specifically, we can reliably access a heap pointer, the vhostnet, and QEMU function pointer, the exit, though we might not use the vhostnet for our exploit. This eliminates the need for complex heap grooming techniques. We can directly and consistently leak both heap addresses and QEMU base address to bypass ASLR. Now that we finished the information leakage, let's discuss how we managed to hijack QEMU's control flow to achieve code execution. Actually, at the very beginning, we don't quite know what kind of primitives the box could bring us. The vulnerability in virtual soundset config just allows arbitrary modification of member streams of sound config. But it's easy to find out that by inflating this value, which represents the maximum configured audio streams, we gain out-of-bounds access to two member variables of the virtual sound object, which are streams and PCM params. Because the space of streams and PCM params didn't dynamically grow when the value of the streams changed. Initially, we considered whether heap grooming could enable arbitrary code execution through this out-of-bounds access. However, our analysis revealed that both streams and PCM params are allocated during virtual sound device initialization and only freed when device is unloaded. Crucially, guest operations cannot influence their heap placement, making traditional heap grooming approaches virtually impossible. But here is the key insight. These pointers are allocated sequentially, and according to locality principle, and these two pointers are very likely to be adjacent in QEMU process memory space. We will demonstrate this through a screenshot while debugging QEMU process with GDB. And we set a breakpointer just after these two objects are allocated. And the printed address information directly shows the results. Just as expected, through intensive analysis across multiple QEMU launches, we confirmed they consistently occupy contiguous virtual address space, providing the function for our exploitation strategy. Let's examine this with the default streams value of 2. This diagram on the right side shows our virtual I/O sound objects memory layout. The streams in blue color is a 2-element array of pointers, each pointing to a virtual I/O sound PCM stream object or now, while PCM params in yellow color is also a 2-element array of structures containing audio stream data, processing parameters like buffer bytes and period bytes, which are both of type int32. Since PCM params elements are guest controllable, we can craft buffer bytes and period bytes values that combine into a valid 8-byte pointer. Then, using our stream out-of-bounds access primitive, we trick the virtual I/O sound device into referencing this forged pointer as a legitimate streams element, which is a virtual I/O sound PCM stream object. Meanwhile, since the buffer bytes and period bytes are all controllable here, this pointer can target any QEMU virtual address space location. And by placing it in attacker controlled memory, we completely forged the stream object's contents. Naturally, we leverage a function virtual I/O sound handle PCM info to achieve arbitrary address read. This function copies parameters from our forged stream object to guess the RAM via the function IOV from buff. Similarly, we achieve arbitrary address right through function return Rx buffer. Since its parameter buffer originates from our forged stream object, by controlling buffer's elements, data, and size members, we leverage function IOV from buff to do arbitrary address right. But this raises a critical question. Where should we place our forged stream object to enable arbitrary address right? Drawing from our formal QEMU VM escape experience, we utilize guest RAM, a natural exploitation service, since it's directly mapped into QEMU's virtual address space. Since guest RAM is actually a shared memory between guest and host, if we prepare the payload in guest RAM, it will also be accessible by the host. But at first, we need to find out where is the guest RAM in QEMU's process memory space. QEMU maintains all RAM blocks via the global variable RAM list, which is a sorted double linked list. Using our arbitrary address read primitive, we extract the host pointer from the first RAM block, revealing guest RAM's address within QEMU's process space. Given the linear mapping between guest physical address and QEMU virtual address, calculating guest allocated addresses becomes straightforward. So far, here comes our complete exploitation plan. First, we use VirtualNet's out-of-bounds read vulnerability to leak QEMU's base address. And second, we leverage virtual sound to establish arbitrary address read primitive and leak guest RAM's address and also other necessary address info. And then we craft stream objects in guest RAM to build an arbitrary address write primitive. And then finally, we can hijack QEMU's timer structure for code execution. And to demonstrate, we could call function system to execute command in host. Until now, we could have stopped here and finished our QEMU VM escape exploit. However, let's consider whether it is possible to perform a black box escape. Reviewing the requirements, we see VirtualNet actually provides stable QEMU address information leakage for ASLR bypass. And while Virtual Sound delivers our arbitrary address read primitive. And clearly, we've already achieved a general QEMU escape exploit. Therefore, we can make a black box escape, QEMU escape using these two vulnerabilities. For information leakage process, in black box scenarios, we only know device VirtualNet helps leak QEMU function address. With unknown QEMU versions, the offsets are undeterminable, which means we could not simply subtract a fixed offset value from the leaked QEMU function address to get the base address of QEMU. But with an arbitrary address read primitive, our solution is simple and straightforward. We scan downward from the leaked function address page by page to locate the ELF header signature, thereby identifying the base address of QEMU. We then parse the ELF header manually to find the GOT table, extract C libraries, function pointers, and figure out C library space address just in the same way. As for the guest RAM address, we similarly obtain guest memory's QEMU's address via the variable RAM list, just the same as what we did in the general QEMU escape exploit. And the only difference is that we could not directly locate this global variable.
I push this button.
Sorry? Directly locate the global variable in QEMU's process memory either, as the EOF header lacks direct symbols for RAM list. And therefore, we decide to search the data segment using distinctive characteristics. First, a member in RAM list object named RAM block notifiers maintains a single node double linked list containing RAM migrate RAM notifier. This notifier object is a static variable in the QEMU process, which means its address must be within a range of QEMU's data segment. Second, at offset 10 in hex, where the member of this notifier object named RAM block resized is located, a QEMU function pointer is stored. Besides, the other two members named RAM block added and RAM block removed are both initialized as null pointer. Both are based on these characteristics, we could identify a unique RAM list candidate, and afterwards we could figure out the guest RAM address. In our general QEMU escape exploit plan, we utilize the timer structure to achieve code execution, but this could bring some inconvenience to our black box escape exploit. Therefore, we refined our exploitation path of device virtual sound. Within function virtual sound handle PCAM start stops code chain, multi-level pointer dereferencing ultimately reaches controllable callback function point named CB. What we only need to do is just prepare the CB function pointer and its argument pointer in the payload and trigger the function virtual IO sound handle PCM start stop. Since we have an arbitrary address read primitive and the base address of C library, we could manually realize the C library's symbol resolution process and get any exploited function address like the system function. And after that, we construct system call parameters in guest RAM and trigger arbitrary command execution in host, which complete our black box VM escape. Now we will show how our exploit work with a demo. We will run the exploits in 3 VMs in VMware Workstation, and the operating system are Ubuntu, CentOS, and Debian to demonstrate different host environments. And in these 3 VMs, 3 manually built QEMU with different versions will be run to perform the exploit. In the exploit demo, we can see that is a little bit time consuming, and the guest VM is hasn't been booted. In the exploit demo, we can see that the MD5 sum of the QEMU's binary is different among the 3 host environments. And the exploit program are all the same according to the MD5 sum result. For the information leakage stage of the exploit, it might take some time to get the address because it is waiting for a random incoming network packet to trigger. And we could see that all of them pop up of a calculator eventually. Now, let's make a brief conclusion for our talk. First, changelog analysis is a powerful technique for uncovering potential vulnerabilities in software, and we propose a practical framework for evaluating whether a vulnerability can lead to a black box escape in QEMU. And we share essential skills and tactics that enable a successful black box escape exploits. From 2023 to 2025, we have finally complete sharing all of our research on QEMU virtual devices. It has been an exciting and rewarding journey, and we are glad to bring it to a successful conclusion at NoHat 2025. Thank you.